Hey, welcome to the next video. I figured I would talk a little bit about Airbnb because I know a lot of people are really interested in Airbnb right now and it's a hot topic. So, why Airbnb? I chose Airbnb over long-term rentals or traditional rentals because the cash flow is typically better. So there's pros and cons to Airbnb, obviously, but I always wanted, ever since I was young, I wanted to build a portfolio of rental properties, and I always just assumed that that would be long-term rentals. Well, as I got further into this industry and this business, I started to learn more about Airbnbs. I mentioned the company that I worked for after I quit my corporate job. We had a couple properties that were Airbnb properties, and they did really well. So when I went off on my own and started doing my own thing, I became somewhat hyper focused on short term vacation rentals or Airbnbs. I don't I call them Airbnbs because it's just like that term is so well known, but really it's like you're going to be on Airbnb, you're going to be on VRBO, potentially booking.com if you want to. You can take private off platform bookings. So it's a short term vacation rental technically, but Airbnb is fine for everybody. So um, yeah, what I've found with Airbnbs is if they're much harder to find like the right deal because there's a lot more research that goes into it. You need to research the location, the data that's out there, public data, like how many properties are in that area, what's their cash flow, are there any laws in that area, prohibiting Airbnbs, are there short-term vacation rental permits that you need to acquire, what kind of expense differences are there just on geographical location alone. So the ones that I have, the two Airbnbs that I do have, are local to me, but my goal is to get something further away geographically to take advantage of a larger scope of opportunity, basically. And I've had some people challenge me on that, other investors who think that they know better or older or wiser, for them they've said, "Oh, I think that's going to be harder than you think, to manage an Airbnb somewhere other than where you live." And I just think that they're completely wrong on that because there's so many people that do it. You could look it up for yourself. There's tons of people that do that. And so I got into an Airbnb group before I bought my first Airbnb, but I had already planned to buy this property and make it an Airbnb. So there's a pretty famous guy. He's not like huge, but he's on YouTube, he's on Instagram. He does really good marketing and stuff, so he's kind of blown up a little bit. His name's Jonathan Farber, and he has a Facebook group called Freedom Fast Track, I believe is the name, and it's all about short-term vacation rentals. He had a similar story to me, corporate job, went to college, just he had a thing with job security, had layoffs at his company, whatever. So he ended up buying properties in North Carolina, converted some of those to Airbnbs, and then he just kept acquiring Airbnbs, and now he's making, a bunch of money because he's got a course as well, and he charges, thousands of dollars. I paid a couple $1,000s to be a part of that group. And there's a lot of power in that, and that's something else that I could talk about, Facebook groups and stuff like that. Like I have a Facebook, but I don't use Facebook for any sort of social networking. I use it for business networking, and that's basically it. I'm a part of a ton of groups on Facebook that are all real estate, and if I'm ever on Facebook, it's to check those groups, to talk, to whatever. It's all about business networking for me. So getting into those groups, real estate groups, and being active and just observing, watching people post, seeing what kind of properties they have, or maybe that they're selling off market. Things like that are really important to getting started and actually just like taking that first step initially to like, okay, let me see what this is all about type thing. And there's groups for Airbnbs as well. I'm a part of many Airbnb groups on Facebook too. So if you're interested in Airbnb, that's a great starting point. Go find some Facebook groups, follow those groups, become a member, whatever, and start observing, what these people are talking about, their properties, what they're making, experiences that they're having, stuff like that. So for me, my Airbnb, the first one that I got, I can give you a little breakdown on what that is. Sorry, I just got a phone call. That was a property that I bought off market for $105,000. And then I put probably $20,000 into it. It wasn't neglected. It was just outdated. So I put money into it, updated it cosmetically, did a lot of things, paint, kitchen stuff, flooring, bathroom, and did some exterior stuff as well. And then I got, patio furniture, a grill, a couple things. Like I said, 20 grand I probably put into it. And then got professional photos done, which is a big one. You got to do, don't take photos on your cell phone if you buy property and you're going to list it on Airbnb. Find a photographer who's going to take the time to do them professionally, edit them and everything. And then I listed it on Airbnb. And so a few months ago, I got that property refinanced. Like I said, I paid 105, put about 15 to 20 into it, and it appraised for 176,000, I believe. So I got a deal, I built equity, and all in all is a great investment so far. And that equity's not going to go anywhere unless we have some crazy real estate market crash, but I don't foresee that happening, especially in my local market. But also on top of that, building that equity, $50,000 or more in equity, which essentially means I could turn around and sell it today and make 50 grand on that investment. The property in the peak season this past summer was producing a net cash flow of around, on average, $2,700 a month, and that's after expenses. So obviously that's amazing. Now in the slow season, which is winter, so we have seasonality here in Michigan, summer, winter. In the winter, rather than trying to deal with bookings and hopefully making money, I went the safer route. I listed the property on a few like apartment websites and Facebook Marketplace for rent as a furnished property. I ended up finding a tenant who was moving from a rental lease that was expiring, and she was going to potentially buy a house in a couple of months. And so the furnished thing was a big deal for her. I had a few people reach out to me. This lady ended up taking it, and she pays me $1,800 a month. Okay, so I'm making, after expenses on that property, I'm probably making like a couple $100, $500 a month or something like that. But it's the slow season, and she's moving out, and it's a 6 to 7 month lease, 6-month lease for the winter, and then it's going to be a short-term rental again. So would I do this again, the long-term renter in the off season? Yeah, I would, because it's safe, and I'm a pretty conservative investor. I'm not like extremely risky. I've turned down a lot of opportunities, a lot of projects, because they don't fit my box of like, it needs to produce, X amount of return in X amount of months. I like to make a certain amount of money on every flip that I acquire. And usually because I'm conservative, I make more than I expect to make, which is always nice. That's always better than making less than what you anticipated to make and ending up in a bad situation. So I stay conservative when it comes to any investment, whether it's an Airbnb or a flip property. But yeah, my first Airbnb has been a great experience. I have a lot of systems and processes set up. Even though it's local to me, I never go to the property, which I think is what a lot of people worry about, or they kind of get stuck on, is like either they expect to not have to be a part of the property and then they don't have any systems and processes in place, so they end up being there a lot, or they worry that they're going to have to be involved a lot. Like, hey, how am I going to manage this property with people coming in and out all the time, on a weekly basis without having to go to the property and be there, etc. And that was like part of the group that I joined was, this guy had been doing it. Jonathan Farber had been doing it for a long time. He created systems and processes and then taught that to the people in the group. So that was probably one of the more valuable things from that group, is like I had this blueprint already set out for me, and that's what I use. And I'm willing to share that with some people if you guys are interested, what that looks like, at least like just through conversation. It's a little bit more complicated than just talking about it. But if I told you what it was, you could go do your own research and then, figure out like how you're going to set all this stuff up. It's pretty basic. It's not crazy. But yeah, so that was my first Airbnb property. I have another one right now that's under renovation, really close to the other one, probably a month away from finishing that. And it's targeting a different demographic, larger families, stuff like that. So again, if you guys have any questions on Airbnb, or if anything that I've said has sparked some thoughts and you want a little bit further explanation on something, just let me know in the comments, and I'd be glad to make another video about talking about whatever that may be. So cheers, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.